Okay, so I thought this was interesting. He said 99% of the online scrutiny is because of my dad. And he is exactly right. That's why it was really a mistake when Dad went on shows and said things like this.
Where do you predict Shedeur and Travis going in the draft?
Top 4.
Ooh, that's pretty beautiful.
Anywhere from 1 through 4. One of them is going to be 1.
That's what I'm talking about.
One of them is going to be
Speak it
1.
into existence.
And the latter one would not go behind 4. Now, all this is subjective because I know where I want them to go. And let's not forget Shallow, okay? But I know where I want them to go. So there's certain cities that ain't gonna happen.
Okay, you on point.
It's gonna be it's gonna be an Eli.
The NFL controls television networks. It's the only sport that tells the networks what they will pay for the rights, and then has the right mid-contract to step in and change it. Yeah, they're not going to have dads tell them where their son's going to play.
Well, now tuned in to the Dark Times Challenge.
And so let's go ahead and dive right in. Shedeur Sanders came out and talked about his dad being the reason why he receives the amount of hate that he receives. And that's no surprise to the majority of us. Most of us already know that that's the primary reason why Shedeur Sanders slid in the draft and why he receives as much hate as he does, especially when it comes to being online. But I want to chime in on something that Colin Cowherd said. Colin Cowherd made a few interesting remarks. And before I comment, I'm going to go ahead and play the video. And then, of course, I'll come back and chime in.
That's why I like the tact that Arch Manning and his family's doing. They're staying in the shadows. That's where all the real power is in life. Get out in the sun and get burned. Deion was in the sun. Deion spent too much time on television talking. Doesn't mean Deion's a bad guy. He's a great recruiter. He's done wonderful things for Colorado. He's an all-time great player. But I have said this over and over, and I will repeat it. Dads, stop talking. Nobody cares. Quarterback dad has become pageant mom. Well, what about John Elway? His dad wasn't on TV telling teams, don't draft my son. Okay, and John Elway is the greatest quarterback prospect out of college ever. To this day, ever. The more talent, the more leverage in every walk of life. Watching the NFL draft this year on both ESPN and the NFL Network was maddening. I can understand why he's dropping. What in the world is happening? Dad is happening. More and more and more. And I know I hear, what about Eli Manning? Eli Manning was a better prospect. Also, his brother was in the league as an MVP at the same position. And his dad had been a brilliantly talented, albeit in a horrible franchise, quarterback. They did a lot of their stuff behind the scenes, which I'm always okay with. I've just said, stay out of the sun. You're going to get a sunburn. Put on the SPF 50. Do your maneuvering behind the scenes where people can claim you said things, but you have culpability. But when you go on television and exclaim, not doing that, we're not going there, you are talking directly to the people, the companies, the corporations, the owners and GMs who are going to draft you. And I think it just did not play well at all.
And so Colin Cowherd said a lot. He said a lot there. One of the things that stood out to me was the disrespect of the Sanders name. He talked about how the Manning family was royalty. Well, if the Mannings were royalty, then what the heck was Deion Sanders? Deion Sanders is one of one. There will never be another Deion Sanders. Not what he did on the field and not what he represented off the field. He's one of one. You're talking about a two-sport athlete, somebody who was electric every time he stepped on the field, somebody who was electric every time he was off the field. And he was an iconic public figure. He was a pop culture figure. And so we're talking about somebody in Deion Sanders and that Sanders name that carries some royalty along with it. And so when Deion Sanders said what he said, I don't think he crossed some kind of imaginary line that these owners and these GMs couldn't get over. I think it was something from the start. Whether Deion made those comments or whether Deion didn't mention it, I think the owners were still going to do what they did, and a lot of us feel that way. And there's something that Colin also brought up. He brought up the fact that nobody wants to hear from dads. And that's true. It's always going to be hard to be objective when it comes to our kids. But Deion Sanders wasn't just wearing his dad hat. he was also wearing his coach hat. Somebody that coached his son, had the luxury of coaching his son all the way from Pop Warner to the collegiate level. Nobody can ever say that they had that opportunity to do that. No former football player of that magnitude can ever say that. And so Deion Sanders was wearing multiple hats, and he wasn't saying anything that a lot of coaches wouldn't say. And I thought he actually did a pretty good job being Deion Sanders, the Deion Sanders that we know. The outspoken Deion Sanders, somebody that's never been afraid to hold his tongue. I thought he did a pretty good job balancing the act of being a dad and then also being a coach. And so I don't think he did or said anything either before the draft or after the draft to make people feel the way that they feel about Shedeur. I think this is something that was always going to be in the works. And there's a lot of different factors that go along with that. But like I said, I don't think Deion Sanders was out of line. But those are my thoughts on it anyway. Go ahead and let me know how y'all feel about it below. Let's go ahead and try to keep that conversation going. And make sure you hit that like button for me one time if you haven't done so already. And as usual, peace and chaos.